the aim control, the tapping control, the reading, all of those skill sets are things that South Korea has in spades. They've shown themselves to be a team that feels like they never run out of picks. They're incredibly well-rounded and incredibly well-versed in a lot of different styles of maps. And so I think in this particular matchup, we're going to have to see South Korea, picking into those maps, and we're going to have to see Australia on the other side stepping out of their comfort zone a little bit. They're going to have to find picks that don't necessarily line up exactly with what they've been playing before that's gotten them to this finals. And we're quickly seeing that first ban going right at that skill set from Australia. South Korea banning out the DT1. That's one of those very few maps that felt really Australia favored in this matchup. If you look at their scores from last week and you look at expectations, Australia probably going to have to ban out a couple reading picks here in response to do the same thing that South Korea is trying to do to them with their bans.
Yeah, that's an interesting DT1 first ban. I still think it's one of the maps. It's still a fair ban. I'm a little bit surprised to see it banned out over the double time too, so maybe South Korea actually feel like they have a higher chance at breakpointing on the raw stamina map that is DT2 over DT1. A little bit surprising because I do think the stamina roster on Australia is absolutely insane. Probably the best in the tourney, only matched by the likes of United States at this point with the teams that are left. But we do have, I think, Dumii accidentally banning the Hidden 2, banning No Mod 1 instead. So those were the two low AR maps of the pool, Hidden 2 being AR8, No Mod 1 being AR 8.2. There was the potential to ban both of the low AR maps, so they're actually leaving Hidden 2 Mayday open and banning out Free Mod 3 instead. And to be honest, I do think Free Mod 3 was one of South Korea's best picks. So I think it's still a fair ban. However, that is going to leave DT2 open for Australia. It's going to leave Hidden 2 open for South Korea. And South Korea also banning Free Mod 4. That's fair. Obviously, if they could, they would likely double ban double time and ban something like DT2 out instead, but they cannot do that. So instead, they ban out Free Mod 4, Freedom Dive. Unfortunately, we'll not get to see it. 222 BPM, stamina heavy, flow aim map, something Australia's going to be really, really good at. So not necessarily something South Korea can't play. It's just of what they can ban that's left, that's probably the most reasonable ban.
Yeah, I think those were very expected bans for South Korea. I think it was always going to be one of DT1 and DT2, and then that Free Mod 4, just get rid of those kind of raw mechanics tests of maps in Australia, as you said. A little bit of reading, a little bit of that small circle size in the Free Mod pool. We're going to get into the first pick here, and I'm very curious to see where South Korea chooses to go, because I think my first reaction to seeing this pool, and I think a lot of people were like this as well, was to say, man, oh man, this is such a worst HR player pool. There are a lot of picks that fall right within his wheelhouse, and so you expect to see South Korea leaning on worst HR player, who was, of course, the number three player in terms of performance score last week, and with a pretty remarkable performance. He put him an average score of 724k on a very difficult semis pool, and this pool, of course, only gets even harder than that. I suppose part of the matchup in this is worst HR player for South Korea versus the question of who's going to be the one matching him for Australia on some of those picks. Obviously, as we mentioned, mrekk, probably easy to say the highest skill cap player in the game. We've seen what he's capable of on some of these incredibly late stage pools, but worst HR player feels like he's sometimes in a tier of his own on those maps that really suit him well. So interested to see if South Korea kind of goes that route the way Canada did, for example, picking into cut paper maps a couple weeks ago against the United States. South Korea picking into worst HR player maps here, I think is a high likelihood.
Yeah, for sure. But, not just the fact that some of these maps are worst HR player maps. A lot of these maps feel really suited to South Korea's strengths overall as a team. When I think of the South Korean types of maps that they would like to pick, I think of things like Gimmick, things like Tech. Right now, they're picking the Hidden 3, which is a Tech Hidden. Also a very good Hidden team, of course. But there's a lot of maps that fall into some kind of alt control tech style, and they're starting with it Hidden 3. I think this is likely their best Hidden, other than Hidden 2 as well. I don't know if they'll really want to dive into the Hidden 1 at some point in this matchup, but here we are, Capchi, Tiny Fate, a Captain 1 map. This is, something like a map you'd expect to see in a normal No Mod 4 slot. It's a pretty standard tech map, obviously very difficult, just a touch under 7.4 stars, with Hidden as well. Definitely adds to the difficulty of this map. I do think this is something that South Korea is going to feel really, really good on as a 4-man.
Yeah, definitely a map that suits them pretty well. We saw them with a pretty good score on last week's Hidden 1, which was a Hidden Tech map last week in that slot. It's probably the most comparable week over week. There was some tapping in that one as well. as some slider aim requirements similarly to this particular hidden 3. This one obviously a fair bit harder, but still kind of within a similar skill set. We saw Worst HR player Restia, Amamya Kokoro, and FlyingTuna in for that one. Looks like we're going to see Karcher in place of Restia as a hidden tech roster for them this go-round. Australia side, you know, they're going to run, I think, some very different rosters depending on the type of map we're seeing. Not quite so reliant on the identical core. Obviously, mrekk going to probably be perma-lobbied, but Zyntex, ASecretBox looks like going to be the members for the first map here for Australia. And we're going to, looks like, get into it with that team.
I think Box is going to be probably the other highest skill cap player alongside mrekk, but Sayo, definitely a tech, gimmicky, you know, alt specialist. I think he's probably, as an individual player, has the skill set that is most suited for this pool. So I think there's going to be a lot of maps to see that as a team, maybe Australia doesn't want to play, but Sayo in particular will like to play, him being a very strong tech player. But you look at the lineup on South Korea, man, and that is a scary, scary thing to see on a hidden tech map. Zyntex as well. Didn't get to see him too much last week, but against Poland, he did have some pretty stellar performances. So interested to see how he does on a map at this skill set, which I don't think he played much of in the previous weeks. But we already see a few breaks at the gate. FlyingTuna, mrekk dropping in the intro, but not going to make a huge difference.
This is the map that you do have to definitely get into a little bit as we start things off. Those early patterns can be pretty tricky, easy enough to break. You see a second miss there from Zyntex as well as from Sayo. So it's going to be South Korea starting off with a pretty sizable lead here. mrekk falling as well. It's down already to just the 1 FC for Australia. Map number 1, obviously, you know, first pick jitters here, maybe a little bit for some of these newer players. You see Karcher the first break for South Korea, but still a triple FC against the solo FC on ASecretBox. This one, not very long. It's only 2.5 minutes, and it's already going to start getting out of hand here quickly. So Australia is struggling very, very much on this particular pick. Meanwhile, Worst HR player now the only FC left for South Korea of Tuna and Amamya Kokoro with some breaks. But it's already a 200k lead. Like, that happened fast, a quarter to a third of the way through.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, Worst HR player, the only remaining FC, might be something we hear more than once in this match as he holds through. Just about to hit the halfway point now, and the lead for South Korea has already built up quite to an extent. mrekk and Zyntex are building up some secondary combos, but it's already going to be so difficult to fight their way back against South Korea's first pick. But at the same time, it's South Korea's first pick on a skill set that is really well suited to them. We do see Zyntex break. Worst HR player does find a break. That's going to be pretty good for Australia, but I just don't know if they have enough time. It's really only mrekk with a big combo, but there it is. It's gone.
And mrekk breaks.
With that break, I think the hopes of Australia breakpointing South Korea's first pick is pretty much gone, but at the same time, not too unexpected.
Yeah, we saw a score difference between these two teams of 550k on last week's hidden one, which again, it was a hidden tech, not quite the same type of map, but similar enough. And I think that, you know, showed that this is not necessarily Australia's favorite skill set to play. This was South Korea's first pick for a reason. This is something they felt confident in picking. They're getting pretty reasonable scores out of their team. Worst HR player on a 500k run, and the others, 400k-ish from Kokoro and Karcher. Karcher going to bring it home, about a 450 combo as we come into the ending. mrekk doing what he can, but just not the scores you needed for the support players from Australia. And this showing why it was South Korea's first pick and showing why this type of map is going to be, I think, pretty good for them in this match. The 580k top score there for Worst HR player. And it is going to be a comfortable first pick won by South Korea. 1.9 mil to 1.5 mil, 355,000 points, the gap between the teams. Really never close at any point in that map. From the very beginning where Australia struggled through the rest of the way where they really weren't able to establish the combos they needed, and just felt like South Korea had an answer with Worst HR player or Karcher or Amamya Kokoro the whole way through.
Yeah, it's a really solid first pick for South Korea. And, you know, if they want to play into maps that are adjacent to that skill set, they have plenty to look at later in the pool. I think as we get deeper into the match, the amount of good picks South Korea has definitely opens up. You obviously still have the Nomad 4, which is an even more brutal tech map, obviously without hidden. But Australia responding with likely their best pick in the entire pool, the double time 2. This skill set. This is something that they've played at such a high level time and time again this entire tournament. I can't really imagine a world where they lose this point, so I think it's going to be a good response from Australia here.
Yeah, this type of map is one that really falls under the category of you can either play it or you absolutely cannot play it. We saw the United States picking this into the Philippines last night and winning it by 800K. Despite the best efforts of Enri from Philippines, the USA just a better overall roster. And that's the sort of thing that can happen on this pick, because once you get into these really binary skill sets where you are either capable of, death stream 234 BPM stamina for 3.5 minutes, or you really can't. You can have a very bad time on this sort of thing. So any team that doesn't have a full 4-man roster for a map like this may do somewhat poorly on it. And Australia, as we discussed before, has shown themselves to be the best, I would say, tapping team in this entire tournament to this point. They have looked very good on all of the tapping favored maps, the DT2s, some of the DT3s, No Mod 5s, etc. And yeah, this was always going to be their first pick, I think. Once South Korea banned out that DT1, it was like, okay, this is the other of the tapping heavy DTs left. We're just going to opt right into that because we've got mrekk, we've got ASecretBox, and we'll have probably, Dumii and
AK and ZX.
And AK and ZX, yeah.
Yeah, that is likely going to be the roster. It's the same 4, I think, that they've fielded on every single tapping heavy map. I think they do have some other players, notably Zyntex, who isn't too bad at tapping, but you only need 4 good if you have the 4, insane tapping players, you don't need any other fill players. So on the side of South Korea, we're going to see Restia, Karcher, FlyingTuna, Peresia, but yeah, this is going to really test South Korea's tapping skill cap. And you mentioned before that this was the other tapping heavy DT left in the pool after the DT1 ban. I still think they have double time 3, definitely has some speed in it, but has quite a good amount of high density aim as well. We'll have to see if Australia wants to pick into that map after this double time 2, but I think this is going to look pretty good for Australia.
Yeah, definitely a pick we like for them out of this pool. You saw, last week, South Korea putting up some of the worst scores out of everyone, unfortunately, on the DT1 and DT2. They played both of them and were, 8th and 10th best scores, respectively, which for a team that's in top 3 here, not the greatest, unfortunately. So we'll see if they've been able to pick that speed skill cap up in the intermediate week in between, or if they are truly susceptible and vulnerable on this skill set. We get in, and you can see that AC early on down to 96 and some 97s. Meanwhile, you see some 99s still on the side of Australia, so a little bit of early advantage just on accuracy alone, though mrekk did break at the beginning, so not what you want to see out of the best player in the world, but there is a lot of map to go still. Obviously, one early break, not going to matter too much.
Yeah, especially with these accuracies still holding the score advantage for Australia. And I do think this is, it's a kind of map where you could play the intro, you could hold on to the intro. It's a break from box, kind of scared for Australia now, but can the tapping team on South Korea hold on? This is only a little over a quarter of the way through the map, still plenty of stamina to go through. I think the real difference maker is going to be which team can hold their stamina the longest, but it is South Korea out the gate, still holding their 4-way in. If South Korea holds on, this is going to be a break point, but I don't know if necessarily they can. This break here is actually beneficial for them, gives them time to rebuild their stamina in their fingers, especially with this little early section, this chill section in the middle. It's kind of scary for Australia if South Korea doesn't find any breaks.
Yeah, you get that little bit of break for your fingers before the death streams come back in. You get to reset that stamina a little bit. We'll see how long South Korea can continue holding on. Maybe just playing possum, some poorer scores last week. They won that match anyway, and now they say, actually, we're secretly going to be a tapping team. Little did you know, as they continue to hold on to the 4-way, it's building up to 130k lead, and there's a break from AK and ZX. This is getting really scary for Australia here on their own first pick. We are now past the halfway mark, and it's going to be a 200k lead for South Korea with that 4-way full combo still intact. This is not something that I don't think we anticipated to happen for South Korea. I don't think we expect them to come out and be this strong on tapping after what they put up last week, but clearly something is clicking for them with this particular pick because they still have a 4-way 1400 combo in for all 4 members and a near 300k lead. This is looking dire if you're Team Australia with only a third of the map left. You are in a situation where you have to rely on the other team missing now.
Yeah, this is an astronomical score from South Korea right now. I don't think anybody expected them to play this well, but they're still holding onto their 4-way. That's the first break from Restia and FlyingTuna. They're both down. It's now 2 FCs up against the full combo from Dumii, the recovery from mrekk, and a good recovery from Box. I think Australia maybe has enough time to to take this back if they hold all their combos, but South Korea might maybe even find another break. It's going to come down to the wire the deeper we get into this map, but that break from mrekk is not going to help Australia at all, and Dumii's gone as well. That's 3 of the combos gone from Australia. It's just Box, and I don't think there's enough time for him alone to make up from this deficit that South Korea is holding on, especially with Karcher and Peresia holding. I think this is going to be a break point for South Korea on the double time too.
Yeah, even with that late break from Karcher and Peresia, they do suffer a couple of misses at the very end, but there's just not going to be the time left that Australia would need. This score gap will come down a bit with ASecretBox on the 1600 combo, but it's going to be too little too late. And that is a very, very bad way to start out your match if you're Australia. A map that it felt for all the world like was infinitely favored to them, instead is going to go over as a breakpoint to a South Korea team that wins on a skill set that nobody anticipated them winning on, the DT2. Their lowest score, 660k, but Karcher at 1 million with that late slider break. Peresia just shy of 1 million as well. And maybe those lights just a little bit too bright for Australia here. They blink a little bit on their first pick, and that's a quick break point down in favor of South Korea, a team that you do not want to give up early break points to. These guys so good at playing with the momentum and able to run with those leads. This is not how you want to start out if you are the underdog in this matchup, is losing on your best skill set.
Yeah, you know, Australia, I don't think they played the double time 2 that badly. It's South Korea performed. You know, I was doubting the double time 1 pick at the beginning over the double time 2 pick, but they clearly proved me wrong, just popping off on the tapping, really showing why they're the seeded first team. I think, you know, before people were talking about tapping being South Korea's worst skill set, and despite that, they put over a 3.3 million scoreline on the double time 2, clearly showing that they can play just about a bit about anything. And if that was Australia's first pick, and undoubtedly I think their most solid first pick out of the pool, it's looking really, really bad for them going deeper into this matchup. As we talked about before, there's so many good picks for South Korea. I think Australia's, you know, ideal situation was winning their first 2 picks on the double times and then going from there, seeing if they can get any break points, but not an ideal way to start it.
It's going to be a tough ask, I think, for Australia to find many breakpoints against South Korea's here, because they have so many picks that feel a little more favored to them, I think, than Australia has favored to them, especially after seeing what just happened on DT2. It is going to be a hidden 1 second pick here for South Korea as they look to consolidate on that break point. So we are going to go into a very traditional hidden 1, 222 BPM, air 9.5. You've got some very difficult aim, kind of dense aim, some linear and geometric patterns, a lot of kick slider jumps in this one as well. So it is really what you expect, I think, when you hear Hidden 1 as an Osu standard tournament viewer. There's a lot of the typical elements you see in this slot present in this map. And we mentioned at the beginning that South Korea felt like a team that would definitely be looking to pick into the Hidden 1 and the Hidden 2 and the Hidden 3. And they say, we're going to go the Hidden 1 as well. We're just going to work through this Hidden pool, opening up with the Hidden 3, now opting into the Hidden 1 to follow.
Yeah, I think the Hidden roster for South Korea is fantastic. And as you mentioned, this is what you would expect from a Hidden 1. Somewhat dense, AR 9.5, 222, so not, you know, not super dense, not, you know, undense, but yeah, definitely just focused on a combination of comfortable, big, you know, mechanical aim, as well as some anti-aim mixed in between. So it's really just all the types of aim you'd expect to see in a Hidden 1 in this map. Does make it very consistent. This type of Hidden 1 aim is very easy to find a break on pretty much any section, so it's really going to come down to the consistency of the players to hold onto those combos for long periods of time. And with how we've been seeing South Korea play, especially on that Hidden 3, it's going to be looking pretty good for them. But at the same time, Australia does have a really good mechanical team. I think the base map without Hidden is really, really good for them. So as long as they have enough levels of Hidden comfort, I do think they have a chance at performing very well in this map.
And as we mentioned, of course, Hidden 1 last week, not really a very similar map, but it was Australia's worst score of the week on last week's pool, and one of South Korea's many very solid scores. Quite a different map there compared to here. So take a look at the roster. It's going to be Amamya Kokoro, worst HR player, FlyingTuna, joined by Allegrissimo. On the Australian side, you've got JGLF, mrekk, Box, and Zyntex coming in for this one. And I think it would be pretty huge here if Australia were able to find the breakpoint right back, but this does look like a pretty solid pick. South Korea, good with the aim, good with the consistency, obviously very strong in the hidden pool as well. A lot of things go their way with this type of map, and so we will see what they're capable of here as we get into it. 3.5 minutes long, so that consistency definitely going to be called into question, alongside some geometric patterning, some anti-aim, some linear aim. You've got a lot of these aim elements thrown your way in this one. And it's early breaks from Australia once more. This is a pattern now. Couple maps in a row, some early breaks early on in this match. It's JGLF and Zyntex, the first two to fall.
Yeah, JGLF stepping in for his first map of the match. Definitely a very strong hidden aim player as well. We'll have to see if the mechanics, the star rating of this match, of this map in particular, is able to fit into his range. But right now, still a good early start for South Korea as nobody misses in the intros. And some unspeakable accuracies on a few of these players. Box being one of the bigger combos on Australia to break. It's now just mrekk on the last FC for Australia once again. Very, very good start for South Korea.
Yeah, this is going in their favor already, 100k or thereabouts, and we're barely past a third of the way through. JGLF breaking once more, not going to help things out for Australia. That four-way still intact for South Korea, and it's 1-100, I believe, for 3 of their members. So the accuracy staying very clean, very crisp alongside the combo. And look at that lead go, 200,000 points, not quite the halfway mark. There goes Box again. And there goes Zyntex as well. It's a double break in response from South Korea, though. Amamya Kokoro and FlyingTuna fall. It is mrekk 1v2 here against Allegrissimo and Worst HR player. Not much supporting combo for Australia against that double FC. There goes Worst HR player and Allegrissimo. It is mrekk time now. The lone FC left in the lobby, and he can work on bringing this score gap down, especially with some supporting combo finally building up on JGLF.
Yeah, I mean, there's plenty of time left in the map. A lot of those breaks from South Korea were at the halfway point, score capping them the most out of any miss in the map. Here's a massive horizontal aim section, and mrekk gets through it. Do find a few breaks, notably the supporting combo from JGLF as well, but mrekk, I think he has enough time, especially with an absolutely absurd 99.91% accuracy FC. If he holds on to the end, I think this could be the much-needed breakpoint for Australia.
Got the ASecretBox and Zyntex combined combo kind of holding off Amamya Kokoro, so it does leave mrekk more or less free to fly, and you can see that score gap coming down slowly but surely. It's at 40k and dropping. This is going to go the way of Australia if their combos stay alive. You gotta watch out, though. There are plenty more patterns to break on. This gets very intense here at the ending. There goes Zyntex. No. There's the break from mrekk. It's a full reset for Australia. They could not have that happen. Amamya Kokoro on a big combo drops as well, but Worst HR player on 400 combo. Allegrissimo on 230 combo. It's enough for South Korea to take this lead back, but Allegrissimo breaks. It's all on Worst HR player's shoulders, as we have come to kind of expect on some of these picks, and he is putting in this work in the back quarter of this map. Unfortunately, Australia does not have the combo anymore. It's breaks for everyone. Amamya Kokoro and ASecretBox basically the only ones holding alongside FlyingTuna, but 60k looking like it might just be enough.
The chance was there for Australia if mrekk held on through, but just the consistency of the whole lineup of South Korea, everybody getting a relatively solid score, 460k being their lowest, which beats out the second highest of Australia, and that just really goes to show that you can have a player like mrekk who pops off, gets 800k on this hidden one at the finals level, but you need that solid lineup from all 4 players to really make the difference, and South Korea just had it. It's why they pick into these hiddens. They're just so good at this skill set as a team, and despite mrekk's best efforts, it wasn't enough. South Korea now up 3-0, going into Australia's second pick, and this is where Australia really needs to get a point.
Yeah, in a best of 13, you don't want to say map number 4 already feels like a must-win, but when these scores have been going the way they have, with South Korea looking so good on their first couple of picks and taking that early break point, it starts to feel like must-win territory a little earlier than it otherwise might. And the team support just better so far for South Korea. Australia has had some struggles on these supporting members. A couple times in a row you've seen, the hidden 3 was mrekk at 500k, no one else over 400,000 points. This was mrekk at 804k, no one else over 450k. They need to get that supporting score going if they want to have a chance in this match, because South Korea just has too deep of a roster if Australia's supporting members continue to have problems. And, you know, maybe a little bit like I talked about at the start, Australia's got 5 rookies. These are players that are not used to a stage that's quite this big. Yeah, they've played plenty of tournaments, but OWC and the OWC finals at that are just a whole different beast. It is going to be that that remaining DT that feels friendly to them for Australia's second pick. It's going to be DT3, so we're going to go into Watashi no Kimochi. Very older style, fairly dense, aim and burst heavy DT pick here.
Yeah. 270 BPM, AR 9.7 does make this relatively dense. I think even more dense than the Hidden One potentially. Somebody can do the math conversion on that, see if that statement is true, but I think it is, obviously without Hidden. But, you know, despite this map having a good amount of bursts, and some of those bursts are also spaced enough that I'm not sure if you can quite get away with double tapping them, a lot of the aim here, because of the density and because of some of the spacing and the consistency, is quite missable. You could be a very, very strong speed player, and Australia has a lot of those, but you could still find a lot of misses on the aim here. And I do think that favors South Korea, because I think if this map was just pure 270 BPM tapping, I think Australia would be really, really favored. But with the added density element, the added aim element, that adds some volatility to the map, and I think that's exactly what South Korea wants on this double time 3, which on paper should be Australia's territory to shine. But with how the double time 2 went, honestly, South Korea could perform very well on this map as well.
Yeah, we saw this map, of course, played in Canada versus Germany, and you know, with Canada being a roster that has a similar sort of situation where they have very good tapping players who are maybe a little bit weaker on the aim, we saw them struggling quite a bit on the aim patterns in this. They weren't having trouble with the bursts or the tapping, but they were having trouble with the aim. So as you mentioned, that's what can trip you up on this one. It's going to be the question to answer here for the players in this lobby, because that is by no means easy aim. Once you get up to, you know, 270 BPM, like, it's difficult. The aim is just as hard as the tapping in this one, I would argue. And South Korea is a team that's looked very good on aim, and on that DT2 they look good on tapping as well. So we'll see. Australia needs some good scores here. You expect it out of mrekk, but they need the supporting combo. They need somebody to be stepping up, because if not, they're in for a rough time, I think, on some of these picks, even on their own side.
The skill set, though, 270 BPM speed, I don't think that's going to be too much of an ask from any of these players on Australia. Have the same four-man you'd expect for tapping that they've had the entire tournament: AKNZX, Dumii, ASecretBox, and mrekk up against Karcher, Tuna, Restia, Amamya Kokoro. I think that was the same lineup for double time 2 for South Korea as well. But here we go. So as you can see here, you have the occasional burst that is obviously pretty fast, but lots of aim to break on as well. And it doesn't really come through, but the density on this map does make it just quite a little bit uncomfortable if you're not too comfortable with that AR 9.7. But I think the players on Australia are honestly well suited to density, so I don't think they're going to have too many issues.
We'll see whether either of these teams has any issues. It's going to be Dumii with that first big break for Australia. That was several misses in that stream, so that will be advantage South Korea. Accuracy staying pretty decent on 3 of the 4 members. Amamya Kokoro struggling a bit, but if you look, you see AKNZX and Dumii both struggling a little bit with hack as well, so they'll have to build that back up. It's going to be a bit of an early lead here for South Korea. Nothing too crazy, only 40k with that one miss from Dumii. Third of the way through.
Breaking on the acceleration from that stream. Quite unfortunate for Dumii, but once again, man, so many 4-ways out the gate for South Korea, especially on tapping. It's not the skill set you'd expect it from them, but they're doing it. Another miss from Dumii is going to put more pressure on the rest of the lineup from Australia to hold on through. And with that break from Box, matched by Restia and Karcher, however, it is now 2-2. It's good for Australia. It's an overall win from them. AKNZX still holding along through with mrekk, and they do have the ACK advantage, I believe. So I think as the time passes, they should slowly swing back to Australia if they keep all of their combos. There's the break. Adds a little bit of nerves, but Amamya Kokoro dropping along with AKNZX. It's now just mrekk up against Tuna, but you can see the accuracy on mrekk just under 99%. And FlyingTuna with that break, it should be good as long as mrekk can hold on to this double time 3.
They called, and mrekk answered. He has the combo, he has the accuracy, he's got the score that his team needs, and he's got some backing, he's got some help. ASecretBox on a decent sized combo to support him. AKNZX holding that FC for quite some time, but it is all mrekk. right now. We are watching the FC still intact for him. It's built up to a 400k plus lead. This is going to be Australia's first point going on the board, and the only question left to answer is whether or not mrekk will bring home the FC, because that's something that I think he's going to need to do. He's going to need to put up some good scores, because even getting the best out of his teammates, I think he does still need to be the big carry here, and he is showing off his ability to do just that on this pick. It is going to be a full combo for mrekk, a 3 million team score for Australia, an 863k victory on the DT3. That's more like the Australia we've come to expect over the course of this tournament. That's the performance that they're capable of on these high BPM DT picks, and that is a big part of why mrekk is #1 in the world and considered one of the best tournament players in the game.
And also, shoutouts to Box. I think just the one slider break and some pretty good backing scores from Australia. That's exactly what you'd expect to see from the team on speed, but that's the thing. There's really not much tapping left in this pool in terms of pure tapping. You have Nomad 2, which is, I think, a 200 BPM, but that's more of a flow aim map, way more focused on the insane flow aim and acceleration and deceleration than the tapping itself. You have Nomad 5 as well, which has some 255 bursts in it, quite a good amount, but also a lot of aim control. And both of those, elements in both maps is going to make those a little bit more favored for South Korea. So in terms of pure tapping, like we saw out of DT2 and Double Time 3, there's really nothing left for Australia to pick into. So they have to go for a different skill set. Maybe they go into some aim, like Hard Rock 1, Free Mod 1. But we'll have to see as South Korea gears up for their third pick of the match.
The question here, South Korea opening up Hidden 3, Hidden 1. Do they just round out the Hidden pool and pick into the low AR, the Hidden 2? Or will they now switch it up with maybe, we talked about Nomad 4 being a good pick for them, that techie, very slider aim heavy pick, or even the Hard Rock 3 if they want to go a different sort of, kind of aim control tech pick. I think those are both pretty good options for this South Korea roster, very strong in that skill set. Taking a little bit of time here on this choice, though.
Yeah, I mean, Hidden 2 sounds pretty reasonable. You won the other two Hiddens. They banned out Nomad 1. They decided to go for Hard Rock 3, which, as you mentioned, this is a tech-heavy Hard Rock with some pretty difficult flow aim sections, sort of akin to some of the patterns in Nomad 2, but mostly focused on tech, a lot of aim control. We saw some fantastic scores on this map in the United States-Germany match.
Philippines.
United States, Canada. Yeah.
United States, Philippines.
Philippines, my bad.
Germany, Canada, United States, Philippines. Those were the
United
two
States,
earlier
Germany
matches.
is going to happen later today.
The USA put up some outrageous scores on this map, though.
Yeah. I'll be surprised if we see a scoreline like that, especially because at this stage, having two near FCs at this level of pooling is so difficult. It's more expected to see on some of the things like DT1, Double Time 1 as well, and Double Time 2, but this map is quite a tough one. It is a little bit short, just under 2 minutes. It does make it a bit more volatile, but also a little bit less consistent. If you get through the hard parts, you can get quite a big score.
I would say, though, this is one of the harder maps in this pool, I feel. It's very, very tricky. The United States' scores, I don't think, are going to be the norm on this pick. You saw those performances out of Rectagon and Vaxe both getting over 900k. Those were, I think, pretty far outside of the standard expectations on this map where, generally speaking, you'd consider 600 to 700k to be good scores. So we'll see what players in this lobby are capable of. Of course, you've got worst HR player, amazing aim control. You've got mrekk, skill cap player. Gonna be expecting him to do on just about everything in this pool. But you're looking at team scores, probably expected to be probably somewhere in the 2 to 2.5 million range, I would think. On the high end, at 2.5, 2.6 million was the USA's score. But I like this pick for South Korea.
Yeah, I think notably because of worst HR player and Karcher, despite the name, he is indeed very good at Hard Rock, notably Hard Rock tech, and obviously the backing from Amamya Kokoro and FlyingTuna. This is going to be quite the South Korea pick. And obviously, another tech pick. They picked Hidden 3. This is another tech-adjacent map. So we'll have to see. We see Sayo step in for Australia, obviously a very strong tech player. Zyntex as well coming in. But yeah, this is going to be a tough one. I think this is another map where Australia is really going to rely on likely mrekk or somebody to have a huge combo to match whatever South Korea puts up on likely Karcher or worst HR player.
And we're seeing kind of this core roster emerging here for South Korea. You've got Karcher versus HR player Tuna, Amamya Kokoro. We've seen a fair amount of those 4 players already in this matchup. See if they can continue putting in work as they have done on their first couple of picks to avoid a break point scenario here. Australia will need to find a break point at some point in this match. It's going to happen eventually if they want a chance. And that early break from Amamya Kokoro is going to give Australia a small early lead, but it's going to be matched by Zyntex quickly, and we are on level footing just like that.
Well, footing out the gate, and because of just how short this map is, any amounts of combo, even the difference between just carrying your combo for 100 combo extra longer, is going to matter as we see Amamya Kokoro and Zyntex find some early struggles. That's Karcher as well, though. That's somebody you'd expect to hold a big combo, but matched by Sayo, it's now mrekk and Box up against Restia HR player and Tuna. As Box drops, it's now once again just mrekk on the side of Australia holding a big combo in the halfway mark, but matched by 2 FCs on the side of South Korea is going to make the work cut out for him. FlyingTuna does break though, and now we have the mrekk versus worst HR player show.
And there goes worst HR player, just like that. The minute you say it, he goes, and it is now the mrekk show. Back-to-back maps where he has been able to show off what he's capable of. The DT3 and Hard Rock 3 could not be much more different in terms of map, but look at what mrekk is doing with the aim control through these streams into the last quarter of the map. It has given Australia a 275k lead and growing. ASecretBox had a solid supporting score for him as well, and it is just breaks left, right, and center for the other 7 members of the lobby. But mrekk is putting on a clinic in the form of aim control on this pick. What a score he has here into the ending. Will he hit the last pattern? He does.
Insane.
It's going to be back-to-back FCs. The DT3 back-to-back with the Hard Rock 3. mrekk, the highest skill cap player in the world. I've said it before. I'll say it again. That is the carry performance that Australia needs him to be putting up. It's a 560k win. It's a breakpoint back just like that. This match is back on even footing if Australia can convert their own next pick.
An absolute monstrous performance from mrekk, not just in the FC, but the accuracy as well is absurd on a map like this, and that's exactly what Australia needed. Now the match is evened up as long as Australia wins their next pick. This is the scary part though. What does Australia pick? And I'm honestly not exactly quite sure what they want to go for here. I think this pool is sort of the difficulty of it advantages Australia in the sense that if mrekk FCs, it's so big, which is what we just saw in the Hard Rock 3. But some of the skill set representation does favor South Korea. And now, with no real pure tapping left in the pool, they still have no mod 5 and no mod 2 they could go for if they want to pick into maps that have a good amount of tapping. But there's definitely elements in those maps that aren't just pure tapping. We'll have to see if Australia wants to play those. Otherwise, I think they likely maybe go for something like Hard Rock 1, Free Mod 1, but yeah, it's up to them. This is going to be probably the start of the hardest matchup for them to pick into in this entire tournament so far.
That's like the hardest matchup in terms of skill sets, and they get, unfortunately for them, a pool that doesn't suit the strength that they've relied on so much to this point. But if you've got mrekk on this level, I think to me it feels like Australia, excuse me, is going to feel like they have more picks open to them because they can just say, hey mrekk, can you FC this map? Okay, we're picking it. Like, it doesn't matter what the map is, because if you can get an FC out of somebody on most of the maps in this pool, you're doing better than the average. We have not seen a whole lot of FCs this weekend. And so we're going to go, we're going to go that Hard Rock 1. So as you mentioned, Australia going to pick into some aim mechanics. And I think this is a pretty solid pick for them. It's going to be a little bit of a departure from what we've seen so far 5 maps through this match. And again, though, it's a map that you're going to say, hey, mrekk, go do your thing on.
You know, it's funny, this skill set in particular, I think has been quite a good option for Australia this whole tournament. It's just, I think the only match that actually really dragged out, deep into the pool, which was the Poland match, the Hard Rock 1 in that pool was not your standard Hard Rock 1. But this Hard Rock 1, just pure aim and stream mechanics. Mostly focused on aim, of course, but you have a good amount of flow aim mixed in there as well to test. Just a Hard Rock aim mechanics map, and I do think this is something Australia is really, really good at, especially at this difficulty. Australia being a mechanics tapping team, but in a few previous matches, they haven't really delved far enough into the pool where they've had to pick this skill set. But against South Korea, 5 maps in on their sixth map, and Australia already has to delve into it. But I think this is something Australia's going to be pretty advantaged on. I think the streams in this map as well, they're going to have players like mrekk, of course, but as well Box, Zyntex. We'll see who else comes in as the 4th, but I think they'll have a very good lineup for this one.
Feels to me like the streams in a lot of these maps are ridiculously challenging. You've got, you know, the Nomad 2 this week has outrageous flow aim requirements to it. This map has some pretty crazy flow aim requirements to it as well. You know, obviously the DT1, DT2 that we've seen, Free Mod 4 goes without saying. Not going to be seeing it, of course, since it was banned out. But all the streams in this pool are very difficult aim-wise. The flow aim requirement very high in this map. I feel like for a lot of players, it might be the hardest part, right? The aim in this, if you're a comfortable aim player, you're going to be fine, but some of those streams can catch you out, so...
For sure. I think also sometimes the difficulty is going from cross-screen jumps to flow aim. The transition between those two skill sets can make one even harder than it normally is in a vacuum. But we can see Australia, it is the roster I expected: Box, Zyntex, and mrekk, with Sayo stepping in. And on the side of South Korea, we have, of course, Karcher, worst HR player, backed by Allegrissimo and Peresia. I think this might be Allegrissimo's first map, maybe?
I think you are not correct, unfortunately. Allegrissimo was in for Hidden One.
Oh, yeah, of course.
I had to double check.
The aim player. Of the South Korean team. Early break from worst HR player, not the person you'd expect, Allegrissimo as well. As you can already see, the consistency of this map makes it quite easy to find misses on, especially in the intro as you're still adjusting.
And also, notably, one of the longest maps, if not the longest map, I think, DT1. DT1, Free Mod 1, but this is one of the longer maps that we'll be able to see since, of course, DT1 banned out and Free Mod 4 banned out. One of the two longest maps we'll have opportunity to see in this pool. So a lot of consistency factor, a very lengthy pick at over 4 minutes. So far, so good, though, for the Australian side. They've got the four-way still intact. A couple early breaks for South Korea, so it's only 38k, but, you know, you'll take what you can get.
Everybody hitting those aim patterns other than Peresia and Allegrissimo, finding some breaks. It's now 2-4, as Australia now the team looking super solid in the intro. But as you mentioned, this is a very long map. Karcher going to be the one to break. I think if there was anybody you were looking at the South Korean roster to find a really good score on this map, it would likely be Karcher. We know how good he is on this kinds of skill sets, but even a player of his caliber can find breaks. It's now just worst HR player on the recovery, not actually the full FC, to beat up against the now three-way of Australia now that Zyntex is broken, and they can just carry on at least two of these combos to a deeper part of the map. Australia's going to be looking pretty good, and especially with that break from worst HR player. Yeah,
that was the biggest combo left on South Korea as well after he broke just at the very start of this pick. There goes ASecretBox. It's going to be a trade with Allegrissimo, but all you've got is Karcher and Peresia on about, 700 combined combo. Meanwhile, you've got mrekk on an FC, you've got Sayo on an FC, you've got a 270+ K lead for Australia. So everybody gets through this flow section, and it's just going to be the break from Zyntex. Not really going to be any movement in that score line. It's still going to be Australia feeling good. There goes Sayo, though. So that is a little bit of that safety net now gone for Australia, as mrekk is the lone FC remaining, and the backing combo is not that big. On the other side, Karcher and Peresia are building up quite well. If mrekk were to break, the door would be open for South Korea, and we're going to be getting past the halfway mark, and you're seeing Zyntex and Sayo having to roll. There goes Box as well. And, well, now you're in danger here a little bit if you're Australia. Despite worst HR player and Allegrissimo breaking, it's Peresia and Karcher able to hold as we get into this solo here coming up at the 2/3 mark. It's going to be huge to see whether or not everybody can hold through these difficult flow patterns. I think this solo is going to make the difference. It is Peresia breaking. It's now just Karcher and mrekk on any big combos. mrekk on the most insane FC. This map is so consistent. You can see that massive stream going across the entire screen. Karcher holds throughout as well. Karcher breaks. mrekk holds. mrekk doing?
Insane pattern. What is he doing? He's on his third FC in the row, and this one, dare I say, would be the most impressive if he can do it. I think he's gotten through the solo section, getting through everything. Absolutely insane. mrekk is doing unholy things in this match right now as he looks to take his team onto their third point.
The big question coming into this match was whether, was how this was going to go. Is this a pool where you can see solo carry performances because you have the best player in the world on Australia's side? Is this pool hard enough where one player putting up massive scores, FC's 900k plus scores, would be enough to carry a team through? And mrekk is answering that in the affirmative now 3 times in a row. It is an FC holding into the very end for the astonishing superstar from Australia. He is doing it once more. it is going to be another very solid win for Australia here, 600k plus, and a big chunk of that is on the shoulders of mrekk, who is going to drop another FC. That is 3 in a row on a finals pool in the winners final. mrekk is just, the training weights are off, and he is showing us what he can do, and all you can do is sit back and be amazed.
Yeah, phenomenal score from mrekk, and to say for the rest of the team, Sayo getting the second highest score in the lobby box, just behind Zyntex, beating out the lowest score on the side of South Korea. The whole team lineup from Australia was, I think, a notch better than South Korea, but that full combo from mrekk making an earth-shattering difference as he is on pace for one of the best performances, if not the best performance of the tournament so far as an individual player, potentially. Now the match is 3-3 as South Korea goes into their fourth pick, and after that Hard Rock 3, they got to be a little bit worried about what mrekk can do on some of these potential breakpoints.
mrekk just, yeah, he's putting the fear of God into South Korea at this point with those plays. I mean, and it's 3 so different types of maps in a row, right? You have the Hard Rock Tech, aim control. You have the high BPM aim and bursts, and then you just have the Hard Rock consistency. It's doing everything that you can ask of a player. Now it just needs to be like a hidden 2, and mrekk needs to FC that as well, so we can just all, just go home. Because
bow
at that
down,
point, it would
just
be
bow
pretty
down
ridiculous.
at that point, yeah. Hidden 2 is pretty wild. I don't know if any player would FC that map back. That is a rough one, but we'll have to see what South Korea picks. Hidden 2 is definitely an option, so we could see if the mrekk FCing Hidden 2 is potential there. And there it is. There's a Hidden 2 pick from South Korea. Probably one of the most expected picks, considering their hidden performances in the match so far and the No Mod 1 ban. But yeah, this is an absolutely brutally consistent, challenging Hidden 2 AR8 consistency map.
Yeah, this, if mrekk's FC streak continues here, I will be amazed. This is not a map that we have seen a whole lot of great scores on because it is very difficult. It is in line with the rest of the pool, but the skill set it represents is very challenging. You've got overlapping patterns, you've got plenty of difficult reading, you've got some aim, some finger control-y bursts even, though it's a lower BPM, so they're not super challenging in terms of speed, but they're there. And, it feels like late round, these Hidden 2s just are such a challenge for just about everyone. And, South Korea saying, all right, we're going to get away from the tech, we're going to go into reading, and we're going to see if mrekk can beat us that way as well, because obviously... you've got to now come up with answers when he's on a day like this, and maybe getting into a skill set that he's good at but not the most known for would be the answer. But man, when you've got mrekk on a heater and you've got JGLF, who's such a good reading player, I'd be scared of Australia on reading maps just as much as on anything else.
Yeah, I do think the reading lineup from Australia, despite the fact that they have banned out the Hidden 2 quite a few times, I do think they're pretty solid on this skill set despite that. Likely expect to see mrekk, JGLF, probably Dumii. I'm not sure who the fourth is. Probably Box, likely as just being such a comfortable hidden player. But yeah, I mean, this is a skill set that South Korea is known for. They're feared for on the low AR consistency, especially where a stage sharp player might be one of the best low AR players in the world. So we'll have to see how it goes for Australia, but I think we're going to see Sayo stepping in, as well as mrekk, Box, and JGLF.
And that's going to be Amamya Kokoro, worst HR player, Restia, and FlyingTuna. I gotta like South Korea's chances on this pick. I think this is, I think, a return to what we would expect them to be doing a little better on in this particular matchup.
I think normally I don't mention this in the middle of matches, but mrekk is almost one match cost ahead of the next player. It's 2.367 to Karcher's 1.445. That is some of the most insane statistics I've ever seen, especially at this level. If mrekk continues on this pace, it's gonna be pretty interesting. But yeah, here we are in the Hidden 2. As you mentioned, this is a map that is gonna be pretty tough to find in FC on.
Yeah, mrekk putting on a clinic so far. We'll see if it can continue. This is a very different style of map. Once again, we're seeing a lot of different kind of facets of this pool being picked into. It's early breaks from Amamya Kokoro, Restia, and ASecretBox, so 3 FCs to 2 Australia favored at the moment, but you've still got worst HR player FlyingTuna on the FCs. Tuna not looking great on the accuracy, though, all the way down at 96%, so we'll see whether or not he is truly comfortable with this pick. Worst HR player obviously going to be doing well on this. This is his wheelhouse, I think, in a way that maybe some of the other maps weren't quite as well. The reading is something that he is very, very good at. And there's the break from Sayo, so it's going to be 2 FCs against 2. Combo advantage to South Korea now as they bring the score lead back to their side for the first time in a few picks now.
Oh, this map just looks so wild, so uncomfortable to play. The patterns are all over the place as we see mrekk and JGLF hold on up against worst HR player and FlyingTuna. This 2v2 is currently the real match within a match of this hidden 2 pick, and I cannot imagine all of these combos hold through to the end, so who's going to be the first out of the 4 to break again?
It feels to me like Tuna should be the least comfortable, and there he is. It's going to be the break, but it's going to be traded immediately. Yeah, JGLF with the break as well. Restia, though, broke also, and there goes Sayo and ASecretBox, so there goes all the supporting combo, and there goes mrekk as well. The FC streak broken, and now it is worst HR player off to the races. He says, hey, mrekk, I saw you carrying those last couple picks. Guess what? I can do that too. Halfway through, still holding onto the FC, 99.81 accuracy. Worst HR player put here for these types of maps. This is, I think, part of how he became so well known, just comboing things that nobody else could combo on these really challenging, gimmicky types of picks, like the low AR hidden maps. And man, oh man, that FC is putting in work when you look at the other scores in the lobby. The other supporting combo really not there, but there's just nothing on the Australia side that can combat what worst HR player is doing right now.
This is a little bit of a reverse of the Hard Rock one. It's now worst HR player's time to shine, and really his accuracy speaks for it all. This map, other than being insane to aim, lots of the rhythms are pretty tough as we see a lot of these players. Worst HR player does find a break, but as I was talking about how insane his accuracy was, however, I think he's still done more than enough. No significant combos on the side of Australia, just the recovery from mrekk, but there's not going to be enough time for Australia to take this back. This likely will be South Korea's win on the hidden 2 as there's some absolutely insane patterns in this map.
Yeah, mrekk quietly has hit everything, so this could have been an FC for mrekk. I think this is on a 1 miss, but even then, it would have been a tough ask to be able to win this one. It would have basically required, if he had FC'd, this would have been winnable for Australia, but that's a tough ask for sure.
Yeah.
And worst HR player, 99.25 act, gonna drop just shy of 800k. That's a 791k score for worst HR player. And you look around the lobby, and again, we're just seeing some solo carry performances on this incredibly difficult pool. Next best score for South Korea was the 438k of FlyingTuna. mrekk down at 538k. And dropping down to 420k for their second best score. So the gaps, that can occur when you have one player who is so comfortable on a map like that, the way worst HR player was here, just speak for themselves as to how difficult this pool is and how good some of these players are at some of these skill sets. And that is South Korea stopping that skid, stealing the momentum back a little bit, as Australia had brought it back to 3-3. Now 4-3. South Korea sticks their nose back out in front here in this matchup.
Yeah, back to Australia for their fourth pick, and they don't, take that much time to think about it. They go for the No Mod 5. I mentioned this before as being the last map in it that has some level of speed in it, has some 255 BPM bursts, but a good amount of 170 BPM aim control as well, some patterns that are more akin to an alt or a tech map. But this is definitely a map where you could have a carry performance make the difference, and with how mrekk's been playing, as you mentioned, if the team asks, hey mrekk, do you think you can FC No Mod 5, and he says yes, well, it becomes a good pick. And with the tapping lineup of Australia, I think it's just going to come down to holding on through those aim control sections. I think Australia will be fine on the tapping, and for South Korea it's going to be the opposite. I think it's going to be, holding on to the tapping sections. I think they'll be pretty fine on the aim control sections, notably worst HR player.
Yeah, this is not a slot that has been consistent week over week. This No Mod 5 is not the tapping heavy No Mod 5, as you mentioned. A lot about the aim control alt in this one. As I think to be expected from a Delis Mirash collab, you're going to get some really crazy aim control patterns. The tapping does show up, but I think even somebody who's not known for speed like a worst HR player can at least get through the bursts, and his aim control will serve him very well on basically every other aspect of this particular pick. But yeah, the question does come up again, can mrekk go up, put up the FC or something close to it? Because that's what it feels like Australia needs, point in and point out. South Korea kind of getting the same thing out of worst HR player, though. It's a little bit, you know, as we talked about at the beginning of the match, right? It's worst HR player who's looked so good. It's mrekk who's looked so good. There's a little bit of a 1v1 aspect over the course of this match. mrekk put in the work to get the 3 points, but worst HR player firing right back. So that battle, that duel between those two is going to continue, I think, on a pick like this that's suited, I think, to both of them.
Yeah, for sure. I think mrekk is going to feel pretty good on this map, but worst HR player as well. He's gotten faster on the speed aspect of this game over, especially this last year. I think he'll be fine on the 255 BPM burst, and I think after that, the aim control sections is going to be his playground. So I think mrekk and worst HR player are both going to be pretty matched on this No Mod 5. The question is going to come down to the backing players, I think. But, you know, even saying that, if one of these players between worst HR player breaks, and, you know, worst HR player and mrekk breaks, and the other holds, that alone will make the difference as well. So, yeah, pretty tricky map, pretty multifaceted map, but we'll see quite fast what this is all about.
And we go back to that kind of classic 4-man core roster for South Korea here. You've got Tuna, worst HR player, Karcher, Amamya Kokoro. We've seen them time and time again on a lot of these picks. mrekk Box have been in for a lot of picks for Australia. Sayo, Zyntex, the other two on this particular map. And we saw that this map is solo carryable earlier with the Enry performance in Philippines versus USA, putting up an FC to win it by 187k there. So we'll see if that sort of thing happens again as the breaks are already coming in. You see FlyingTuna, Karcher, Zyntex, and ASecretBox all breaking in the intro. Worst HR player, Amamya Kokoro, 2v2 now against mrekk and Sayo. mrekk is going to break once again, so yeah, not going to be starting up a new FC streak here. And that's advantage South Korea as the double FC is going to eke out a little bit of an early lead.
It's just Sayo now on the side of Australia to hold on. Still only a quarter of the map in, but the longer that worst HR player and Amamya Kokoro hold, the more damage it's going to do to Australia, especially with mrekk breaking again and Sayo dropping. That's all of the full combos gone from Australia. It's just Zyntex in the recovery. Amamya does find a break, but it's still worst HR player to hold that FC. Karcher matching Zyntex. That score lead is going to get bigger as this worst HR player FC remains. And I did mention, despite the tapping, I do think this is still squarely a worst HR player map. It's just mrekk unfortunately not being able to match, and Zyntex breaking and Box breaking. That's all the recovery is gone. It's looking pretty dire for Australia at this stage.
Yeah, this one looking very rough. Halfway through, you've got a worst HR player on an FC. You've got Karcher on an early break with a big recovery combo, with FlyingTuna on some solid combo as well. And really not a whole lot going here for Australia as mrekk is really struggling with this pick. I expected much more out of him on this map, and it's just not happening. Sayo with a decent recovery combo, but it is really just the South Korea show once again on this map, putting up an incredible team score thus far with worst HR player. Like we said, you know, the aim control is going to be good for him, and he can probably get through the tapping. Nobody has good accuracy, so the fact that he's at 96.18 just doesn't matter, because not anybody in this lobby that's doing any better. And you've got Karcher and FlyingTuna on solid backing combos for him as well. And this is going to be a pretty one-sided break point if things hold, because that is a 600k lead, and it's only continuing to grow. There go Box and Zyntex again. This is going to be South Korea taking the breakpoint lead back. It's going to be 5-3. This one's all but done. Is worst HR player going to be able to pull off another FC? He's got his own streak going here. If so, anything mrekk can do, worst HR player saying he can try to do just as well, if not even better. This is another remarkable performance.
I mean, this is the that was the most dominating scoreline of the match by far. Over 1.1 million to South Korea, as not just the huge FC from worst HR player, but some pretty huge backing combos from Karcher and FlyingTuna, as well as Amamya beating out almost 3 of the players in Australia, beating out 2. So, I mean, this was a map. I think the first time I saw this in the map pool, I was like, oh, this could be an Australia pick. But the second time I saw it, I was like, I think this is a South Korea pick. That's why I was a little bit surprised to see Australia go for this. Maybe not having the ideal performance for them. I imagine that was a little bit of an underperformance. But South Korea just looking so good. And now that's another breakpoint for South Korea. 5-3 going into their next pick. Australia once again has the pressure of having to take a breakpoint to even out this match.
And it's starting to feel dangerous here for Australia. It always seemed, and we've said this a few times, it always seems like South Korea had more picks than their opponents in this match. But the big question was going to be, could mrekk show up or somebody show up from Australia on the picks that weren't Australia favored to make them competitive or to steal some away. And that was true for a couple of points, but just as quickly as it came, that advantage has gone back the other way, and South Korea really looks like the stronger top to bottom team on the last couple of maps. And with their own pick here, you've still got the Nomad 4 if you want to go that slider aim tech option. You've got the DT4 as well, which to me does feel like a pretty solid South Korea pick as well. They're the team that has more picks left in this pool later on in the match, and it's gonna you would expect it to serve them well as we come down to the end, and there is going to be that Nomad 4 pick.
Yeah, so sticking to the tech, this is more close to the Hidden 3 than this was to the Hard Rock 3, which was the breakpoint they lost. So still a good pick for South Korea. Very, very, very challenging tech map. Insane slider velocity, lots of cut doubles and cuts in general. 3 minutes as well makes this quite a consistency test, as a lot of these maps have been. This is another map where you don't expect too many teams to be able to have too many big combos, but I think South Korea is one of the few rare countries in this tournament that could actually realistically put like quite an insane team score on this map despite its difficulty.
This is I don't know, this is one of the hardest slider tech maps I think I've ever seen in an OWC. This is definitely up there. We've already seen some pretty good scores on it though. We saw Henry with an S rank 650k, Taquito with an S rank 600k, Kiak with a 638k. Like, this is definitely a map that people are capable of doing pretty well on. But you know, you saw what ASecretBox said in the lobby after the last map, where he FC'd it 3 times in a row in practice and then dropped a sub 300k score in the match. And I think that's the sort of thing that can happen on a lot of these nomads, where you can just have a somewhat unfortunate run in the match because they're not maps that are easy to be consistent on, especially not in a match setting. And I think this is another map that's kind of like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, especially this skill set feels so hard to be consistent on. You blink and you'll find a random break on a slider or on a cut. And this is going to be another map where I think the pressure is going to be on some of Australia's star players. But I actually do think, you know, Sayo, very strong tech player. Mrekk obviously has been doing some mrekk things in the match. Box as well has the potential to play quite well on this. I think Zyntex coming in, I'm not sure how comfortable he is on the tech, but likely will have to match whoever is the fourth on the side of South Korea. But yeah, we have worst HR player, FlyingTuna, Karcher, Amamya Kokoro, the core roster for South Korea. They're going to be looking pretty good on this map like they have been on the Hidden 3. But the pressure's on Australia. It's either going to be on this map or at the very least South Korea's next pick, where they need to find a breakpoint to keep this match alive. So, yeah, can Australia do it? We'll have to see.
Yeah, it's scary times now if you're Australia. 5-3 down with South Korea's pick here. I feel like this one, I would not want to be trying to be in a 6-3 down situation where you have to win 3 points in a row and a tiebreaker. I think you really want this breakpoint back right now so you can try to level things out going into your own next pick. But it's a tough task, as it has felt the whole way through against a South Korea roster that's this strong on some of these types of picks. And so in we're going to go. It's the early break for FlyingTuna, but it's traded with Zyntex. And I think you're going to see plenty of misses. You're going to see some Bancho misses as well, as that was a Bancho miss from FlyingTuna. Sliders and Buzz Sliders, like you see in this map, has a really hard time with. So just watch the combo and see if it shows back up as you get breaks from all 3 members but mrekk on the Australia side, and a double FC on Amamya Kokoro, worst HR player. 99.17 and growing AC on worst HR player, by the way. I don't know how you hold 99 on this. That's not right.
I mean, worst HR player, I think a lot of people know some of the scores he can put up on tech, potentially the best tech player in the entire world, and with that break from mrekk, it's now once again the worst HR player show, as none of those misses on Australia were Bancho, they've all broken. Worst HR player breaking as well, but it's that recovery from Karcher, and the overall scoreline on the side of South Korea is just a little bit stronger, and as this map goes along, the score lead as a raw number might not be too large, but as a proportion it might be, especially as Karcher still holds onto this recovery.
Yeah, when a lot of the scores are going to be relatively low, even a score gap of 100k can feel like you're trying to climb a mountain if you're on the other side of it. And that's kind of the position that Australia is finding themselves in here, as they're finding break after break. It is a three-way miss from Amamya Kokoro, FlyingTuna, and Karcher. Worst HR player, the only one. Hold on, he breaks as well. The opportunity would be there for Australia, but they don't have any real combo to speak of other than Sayo on 400. He's the only one, though. And this is a lot of work for him to try to do, especially when he's all the way down at 93 AC. It's not doing any favors. The score lead is starting to creep downward as ASecretBox is on a 240 backing combo. But it's a long way to try to regain 170k, and with the break coming from Sayo, I don't know that it's going to feel very doable as we get into another incredibly difficult section in the back third of this map.
This map is just so rough to hold on through as all of the players find difficulties, but still South Korea just a little bit more comfy on this insane level of tech. And as you mentioned, this might be the lowest scoreline of the match so far just due to the map's insane difficulty. And with like an eighth of the map left, I think this 200k may as well be 500k for most other maps. I think this will likely just be a solid pick from South Korea. They'll take this match 6-3 and really put Australia on the back wall to not win just two of their picks, but the next pick from South Korea as well.
This is going to put Australia in the proverbial spot of bother. It is not a good situation to be in for Australia, and it's exactly, I think, the situation you might expect to have South Korea in this match, in a pool that looked very good for them. They're getting the performances they needed. That is another really, really solid score out of worst HR player. It's only 467k, but it is almost 98 AC. I mean, when you look around the lobby, the 97.89 AC is pretty incredible, and that helps out a lot when you see the AC on the other players, especially like that 91 on Zyntex, for example. And that is now South Korea match points, several of them, the rest of the way through, to try to close this out and go back to the grand finals from the winner's side. Australia needs to win 2 picks of their own, plus a break point, plus a tiebreaker, if they want to have a shot in this one. And man, oh man, it felt for all the world like Australia might be able to put together some momentum and make something happen in this match when they were winning those few picks in a row on that absolute tear from mrekk. But South Korea has just snatched all of that advantage back away. They've stolen all the momentum for themselves. And we're at the point now where any pick here could be Australia's last, and they all feel quite dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, this is what we mentioned before. As the pool gets thinner in terms of picks, South Korea is looking a little bit better. Australia calling out for the timeout as they really think about this next pick, which is going to be quite important for them. And I mean, what you're left with here, free mod 1 is an option if you want to lean into the aim mechanics. That was President Hard Rock 1, but it's also looking pretty good for South Korea. I think the free mod element of it, having to go no mod, having to go hidden on top of that Hard Rock player, is going to likely favor them. Yeah, free mod 2, which is like an awkward aim map, has some tapping in it, which could be good for Australia, but still not really ideal. DT4 go into against South Korea. No mod 3 as an alt consistency map isn't necessarily something I think you'd want to pick into South Korea as well. And no mod 2, despite being a stamina flow aim map that Australia normally likes to pick into, its awkward angles and deceleration and acceleration kind of favors some of the players in South Korea. I still think potentially at this stage it might be a choice between no mod 2 and free mod 1 as your last 2 picks, but yeah, it's looking scary. There's really nothing here that is clear cut for Australia.
Yeah, I think after what we saw from mrekk on the Hard Rock 1, I think I might like the free mod 1 angle here for Australia. You're going through the list of available maps and none of them feel super great, but if you can get that kind of performance from mrekk again on the free mod 1 on the big difficult aim consistency pick, that might just be the angle because nothing else feels very good. You're picking the least of the remaining evils if you're Australia in this particular scenario, and just kind of hoping for the best because you're on the back foot. You're down to your last life, and you're taking the time out even, so trying to collect and gather. But I still think that the picks just favor South Korea with what's left. So going into another consistency aim pick and saying, hey, mrekk, can you give us what you gave us earlier in this match at least one more time to stave off elimination into the loser's bracket, one more map? But it's going to be the Hard Rock 2 instead. I am a little surprised to see this pick. I didn't really consider this for a second. It's going to be CS 7.02, so it is small circle size, kind of flow aim, kind of a flow aim hard rock pick, I guess.
It's like
it's a little difficult to categorize.
I would say this falls somewhere into alt aim control. It's 143 BPM. There's a lot of 1/4s, active 1/4s at that BPM, which at this circle size, like this map looks absolutely brutal to play. But at the same time, despite this looking like something that South Korea could have picked into, Australia did have 2 of their 3 wins on the hard rocks. So honestly, I think staying in the hard rock lane when that's worked pretty well for you, even on the hard rock 3, which on paper looked pretty good for South Korea, but that was won off an insane FC off mrekk mostly, so we'll have to see if mrekk can play to the same level on hard rocks that he's been doing. So far he's 2 for 2 on the hard rock maps, but this map is likely to be the hardest one to FC. And because of that, I do think this is going to be the one where the backing combos matter the most. And at CS7, with some wacky alt aim control patterns, this is going to be a skill set that I think very few people are going to be comfortable to play.
Yeah, I have to think that backing scores are not going to be super great on a map like this. This is the sort of pick where you have maybe 1 or 2 players on it that can do very well at most, and then the others may well just be along for the ride. Because it's so hard to be good at this type of skill set. So few players really practice this sort of small circle size pick. And we might be seeing Spectre coming in? Are we seeing Spectre coming in for his first map in 2 weeks for South Korea? That'd be an interesting one. A match point up on your opponent's pick. Get him some experience here in this late stage pool. Allegrissimo State Sharp player Karcher. Oh, Amamya Kokoro.
We'll not be seeing Spectre in on this one. Allegrissimo, Restia sharp player, Kokoro, Karcher, Sayo, Zyntex, Box, and mrekk. And this is for everything. Australia's pick going in down 6-3 on match point. They have to win this and the next 3 maps, including tiebreaker, if they want to win this match. It's a tall order, and it starts with this. 2 minutes, 40 seconds, very, very, very brutal. Hard Rock 2. I don't expect to see many big combos. Likely to see a lot of early breaks. We see a break from a few players, I think, before the break, like, pop-up even comes up. The few from Allegrissimo, Kokoro, and mrekk.
It's 3 early misses. There goes Karcher as well. It is down to guess who? Worst HR player. The lone full combo remaining on South Korea through the intro. Zyntex breaking along with mrekk again. Man, mrekk went on that amazing run. He's got to recapture that magic, and it just doesn't look like it's happening. But fortunately for them, ASecretBox and Sayo are both still holding along with that FC from Worst HR player. But there goes Box, and that's going to be an advantage South Korea as Worst HR player holds, and Allegrissimo has the backing score. There is not a lot of backing combo. There goes Sayo as well. This is going to be dire straits already. Only a quarter of the way through, but the consistency just doesn't look like it's there on this for Australia. And meanwhile, well, wait just a second, as there's the break from Worst HR player, but look at the combo coming back together from Allegrissimo and Karcher. It's going to give them a bit of a gap here for South Korea, just under 100k lead.
Some decent build-ups from Australia as well, though. Zyntex is about to hit 400. Another miss from Sayo, but mrekk and Box both on 200 combo. This is going to be relatively close. It's essentially a 3v2, but Allegrissimo and Karcher on those 2 big combos. Halfway through the map now, there's those breaks. There's the nerves building up as everybody sees the scoreboards. And this is going to come down primarily to Zyntex right now as well on the highest accuracy on the side of Australia to hold on to this Hard Rock 2. I don't think he's been having the best match so far for his standards, but this would be his opportunity to show up for Australia and keep them alive in this match.
This map doesn't get any easier, though, as we move into the final third of the pick. There are some very difficult flow patterns, some very difficult slider aim as well. There goes Amamya Kokoro, there goes Zyntex, there goes ASecretBox, and it is now Allegrissimo and Karcher. Allegrissimo breaks. It's now Karcher and Worst HR player, I should say, but there is just not anything for Australia. They don't have the combo, they don't have the scores, and Worst HR player Karcher, the duo that has done so much work for South Korea over the past couple of years, looks like they might just be bringing it home here. South Korea out to a 265k lead. They break those 2 big combos, but I just don't know that it's going to matter because the time is not in Australia's favor. The combo is not in Australia's favor, and this is going to be South Korea. It looked so good for Australia there for a while, but South Korea just took over this match. That is 4 maps in a row from 3-3 to 7-3. South Korea, the all-time frontrunners, the momentum stealers, and the match winners. They are your victors. They go onward to the grand finals. They guarantee themselves a top 2 finish in back-to-back years. They'll be the winner side representatives. Australia knocked down to losers, and they'll have to fight their way back. And man, oh man, South Korea, it just seems like a bit of a team of destiny at this point with these performances they're getting out of all of their members time and time again.
Yeah, and especially what really shocked me from the South Korean lineup was that phenomenal double time 2 score. I think beating out Australia on the stamina skill set was not something anybody was expecting. And if they have even tapping in their bag, they're going to be looking very, very fearsome coming into grand finals against whoever they go up against. Australia will be going down in the losers bracket to verse the winner of USA-Germany, which will be happening later today after a show match. It'll be happening in, I think, a few hours. But, you know, Australia, I have the best wishes for them in the